So I'm Montel from Triple M Enterprise, delighted to be joined by Singh, who is the legal director for Matchroom. How are you?
Very well, thank you, mate. Really appreciate you having me on. It's quite exciting.
To be honest with you, this is something I've really wanted to do because I feel like it highlights people that work in a very big company and a very big industry, and you're a lot of the time behind the scenes. But before we touch on obviously what's happened within Matchroom, I want to talk to you about you, the person. How did you get into the industry, wanting to be a lawyer? What's the journey like? Talk to me about some of the upbringing of a child and then kind of what you wanted to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, probably something you've heard many times before is that you didn't necessarily think you were going to go into the career that you've gone into, and law was definitely not a career that I'd ever thought about. It was I did business management at law at university, but I was always sort of more focused on the business side of things. I guess family background is more in business, so I always just thought that I would go into business and didn't really focus on the law part of it. But I found myself to really enjoy studying law more than I enjoyed studying business, and that sort of ignited an interest in the area. And obviously law is such a broad field. I didn't know which part of law, whether it was criminal law, commercial law, that I wanted to go into, but I knew I wanted to carry on studying it. And so I did business management at law at university. I got a few paralegal jobs, and the short story is then I got a training contract and went through law school and qualified as a lawyer, and now I'm here at Matchroom. Obviously the deeper story, which I hope we go into, is a lot more detailed and complex than that, but that's a nutshell.
No, the nutshell part's definitely good, but I definitely want to dive into that deeper. So it's just where was the ignition where you was like, this is the point where I think I definitely want to go into the lawyer part? You obviously mentioned that it's something that was an interest, but what really piqued it for you? What was attractive to you?
Yeah, I remember going for lunch with a friend at college who had got a training contract at the time. Now, you for international law firms, they recruit you 2 years in advance because they put you through 2 years of law school, and then you start with them once you've completed law school. So I went for lunch with a friend, and he mentioned that he'd got a training contract with a firm. I thought, that sounds really interesting. At this time, I didn't know what a training contract was. I didn't know the process. I wasn't aware of it. So I went away and I researched it. I thought, that's really cool. I definitely want to do that. And that was sort of the first flick in the switch where I thought, I'm gonna try and pursue this line of work. And as I researched it, it's a very, very competitive field. I think for and don't quote me on the exact numbers, but law firms will have anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 applications for anywhere between 20 to 30 places. So it's a very, very competitive area. But I'm somebody who, when I sort of fixate on something that I want, I make sure that I can make it happen. And so the journey was a long road. I had 116 rejections. I know the exact number because I went back and counted them over a 3-year period. But it was a lot of graft. It was building the door to knock it down. It wasn't that doors were open for me. But I really wanted it, and I wasn't willing to take no for an answer. So I'd finish work. I'm a Midlands boy. I live in Leicester. Now I live in Birmingham, but worked in Birmingham. I'd finish work. I'd get the train to London. I'd go to the legal mile. I'd walk into a bar and I'd just start talking to people, and I'd take numbers and then I'd email them, and that really helped me get my foot through the door to speak to these big international law firms. Their criteria is very high. The first 2 questions that they often ask on your application form is, did you get this at A level, and did you go to a Russell Group Red Brick University? I had to say no to both of those questions. I didn't get A, B or straight A's. I was a straight C student, and I didn't go to a Russell Group Red Brick University. I went to De Montfort. So from the very start, it was very difficult for me to get my foot through the door. So I thought, how can I change that? And networking, I'm the biggest advocate for. And that's why I'd take the train to London. I'd go speak to people. I'd email them, and provided I made a good impression on that person, I was able to get an interview at those law firms. And then I knew, once I'm face to face and I'm on the same level playing field, I was confident in my ability to get a training contract.
Have you always been the type of person that's really been that personable? Have you always been that way inclined from childhood and stuff like that? Like when you just get friends and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like that's something I've always prided myself on. I think, you know, I have I'm very lucky to have a very good friendship group and always been able to sort of build relationships, which is something that I think has obviously helped me. And I think a lot of the time is doing things on your own. You kind of have to have the ability to build a relationship and spark a conversation, and that's something that I think that has really helped me.
And then talking about obviously your first job when you officially got that, what was the feeling like for you when you like, I landed this?
I mean, the feeling of getting the training contract is something that I will never forget. It was such a long road. It was 3 years. I mean, the firm that eventually gave me the training contract, a firm called Evershed Sutherland, I was rejected from them 3 times before. So it was definitely a sigh of relief, but just this like a huge sense of accomplishment for me that what I set out to do the 6 years before, I'd finally got it. And yeah, I won't ever forget the day that I got that phone call. My first legal job was as a paralegal in Leicester, so you know, those stepping stones certainly helped as well. And you know, any experience is good experience. It doesn't have to be law, and that's what I say to all aspiring lawyers now who are in their first year of universities: is you don't have to do a law degree and you don't have to have legal experience. It's actually really what experience you have that you can translate into any job that you do, and it's those transferable skills that are really important, I'd say.
What are some of the tricks you picked up along the way from obviously getting those rejections? Like a lot of the time it can obviously be resilience, but what are the other traits that you probably have picked up?
I think the biggest thing for me, and it's going back to networking, and it's also understanding, for me, I'm not saying that this is a general rule, but for me, how to network. And initially it was very much, this is what I want. You know, I really want to become a lawyer. I really want to work at your law firm. I really want to do this. And the reality is no one really cares about you. This is my personal experience. No one really cares about you, but they do care about themselves. And anyone who tells you that they don't, I would say is lying. So I would sort of flip the switch and I would say, you have achieved everything that I would really like to achieve. You have done this. Can you tell me how you did it and what tips you can give me? I'd only ever ask 1 or 2 questions, but you know, whoever I was meeting would then spend 10 minutes talking about their achievements. And again, everyone loves to talk about their achievements, and that's how I would build that relationship. And I would then say, that's a really good story. I've got really good pointers there. Do you mind if I put you down as a personal contact on my application form? And then you have an in. And that's really how I put it down to getting a training contract for me.
Do you know what? I like that. And I'm going to go slightly off topic and talk about something I wasn't going to talk about just yet. But have you ever considered doing any mentoring or anything like that? Or is that something you actively do?
Yeah, I mean, not so much now. I'd love to keep doing it. But an organisation that was really, really helpful for me was an organisation called Aspiring Solicitors. So Aspiring Solicitors was an organisation set up by a gentleman called Chris White. And the aim of that organisation is to help students who don't ordinarily get the chance to go in front of these big law firms with those opportunities, you know, talking about diversity, etc. So they helped me massively. They changed the way I did my applications, which, you know, ultimately got me in the door to many of these law firms. And off the back of qualifying as a lawyer, I joined them as a mentor, where I would then pass on the skills that they sent, that you know, that I got from them and learn generally through the process. I don't do that as much as I'd like to do that now. Obviously work takes over. But no, absolutely. I love helping people wherever I can.
No, that's definitely something that if you get a chance, you just, the way you even are very well spoken and the way you take time to actually break down the answers, I do like that. So I think that could help someone going forward. This is something off topic, but obviously going back to your actual journey, obviously about when you started to make really big inroads and you thought, this is something that I'm going to aspire to achieve and go higher and higher. Like, what were the next steps for you after the first job that you had?
Yeah, so as a paralegal, I knew that I wanted to get a training contract. I wanted to qualify as a lawyer. So, you know, that was the end goal, sort of working backwards. How do I get there? You know, I started off working in a small firm in Leicester, and then I sort of progressed to a bigger law firm as a paralegal. And, you know, with that comes different experience. It becomes a better experience in terms of the transactions that you're working on. You speak to more people in diverse areas, which also, you know, you add that all into a pot, it's only really helpful for you in the terms of in the experiences that you gain and that you can talk about. And ultimately, as being as well-rounded an individual as you can be is what's really good, which is why, you know, any type of experience is good experience. I worked in retail for throughout my studying process, and those skills were hugely transferable into everything I'm doing now as well. So for me, it was just taking little steps on a daily basis that got me closer to that ultimate end goal. And getting the training contract was that. And then obviously the qualified journey began, and the route into Matchroom, which I'm sure we'll touch on.
Yeah. Talk about some of the fields you've worked in. Obviously, I know, like you said, lawyer, being in law is very broad. So is there particular fields that you worked in?
In terms of specialisms,
yeah.
I mean, as a paralegal, you really want to try and work in as many different fields as you can, because you don't decide really where you want to qualify into until much later on, until you've done your training contract, you've had experience across 4 seats. The training contract is 2 years, and you do 4 6-month seats. So you get to experience those 4 areas, and then you tend to qualify into one of those. It does happen where you qualify into an area that you haven't had any experience in, but that's quite rare. So yeah, no, I just tried to get as much experience in many different areas as I could, which helped me sort of understand what areas of law I liked and wanted to go in, and what areas of law that I felt like I probably wouldn't enjoy that as much as these, and that's what I would focus on. And that helped me to then narrow down the list of law firms that I would apply to, because I would only apply to those firms who were known to be sort of big in those areas, because your application form has to be very tailored.
Okay. And did you have a sporting background as well, or something that you wanted to work in towards?
I mean, no, I never worked in sports law. I played sports. I played cricket growing up, but I never worked in sports law. But it was something that I was always interested in. I've always been a huge boxing fan, and working for Matchroom was the goal.
Moving on from like the fact that you've liked sports as well, when did you narrow down and say this is the route that I want to go down in terms of the sporting side of things as well as being a lawyer?
I would say even before I wanted to be a lawyer, I wanted to work for Matchroom.
Wow.
I was always a huge boxing fan, so it was always in the back of my mind. And obviously then when I qualified as a lawyer, it became more of a, oh great, maybe this is the way that I can do that. And then that became the next goal. And as you know, we go back to what we discussed at the start, is when I've got a goal in mind, I'm sort of a little bit obsessed until I achieve it.
So aside from Matchroom, what would you say is one of your greatest personal achievements up until that point in your life before you started to work for Matchroom?
Definitely getting the training contract. It was a brutal process for me. Now, for some, it's an easy process, and that's not me saying it's an easy process. I'm saying for some, it's an easier process. Yeah. For others, it's a really difficult process. And you know, for me, as I said, I didn't tick the boxes. So for me, it was finding another route in, and it was a 3-year process. So that certainly for me was something that would probably always be top of the achievements for me.
Perfect. And let's talk about obviously getting into Matchroom now. Yeah. So how did you even start to concoct the idea and go, this is exactly the steps I need to take to get there?
Yeah, well, it's funny because you'll see it on my Instagram. I think it was in 2016. I DM'd Eddie. He would never have seen it, right? But it was, I'd love to work for Matchroom one day and combine my 2 interests of, boxing and being in law. And it wasn't until 5 years later where I then got the job at Matchroom. In terms about how that came about, as I say, law firms recruit you 2 years in advance. And in that 2-year period, just before I started law school, I went to New York. My cousin lived in New York. So I thought, let me go for a blowout before I come back and get my head down and study. And I was just on their website, and I saw that my boss, Sean Palmer, was based in New York. And I thought, what have I got to lose? I messaged him on LinkedIn, and he's also a lawyer, obviously, went from private practice to Matchroom like I have now done. But I messaged him, I said, look, your journey is something that I aspire to. I'd love to sit down with you to talk about how that happened for you. At the time, I don't think he was in New York, but he was very kind to message me back, and we had an initial conversation. And then it was just keeping in touch. At the time, obviously, there was no need for another lawyer at the company, but I would just message him, nothing that he'd ever have to reply to, just, you know, congrats on a great show, just keeping in his head. And, you know, when the time came that they were looking to recruit, he was very, again, kind enough to message me and ask if I was still interested. And obviously the answer was yes. And then the process went from there.
What was that, if you can obviously talk about, what was that interview process like, obviously, to go into Matchroom? Because I know they've got a very unique culture there.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, because I had so many conversations with Sean prior to actually having a formal interview, it didn't feel like an interview process for me. Certainly that first conversation with Sean. The second interview, which was with Sean and Frank, yes, felt a little bit more like an interview, but you've met Frank, and it certainly wasn't as formal as an interview can get. You know, they were both in Las Vegas at the time, I believe. We had a Zoom call, and it was just about me, really. And they obviously made an impression, so hopefully they don't regret that decision.
What was the initial days like when you first started in Matchroom?
Pinch me moment. To be honest, it still is. You know, it sounds very cringe or cliche, but you know, they say if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And I can't say that I've felt like I've worked since I've joined Matchroom. That's not saying it's not been hard work, and it's not saying I haven't grafted, but it hasn't felt like work. You know, largely probably because we're not a Monday to Friday kind of business. We're a 7-day a week, but I don't have that Friday, oh God, glad it's Friday feeling, or no, it's a Monday feeling, like, you know, I know most people do have. I had it in my previous job, so I'm very lucky in that regard. But again, I feel like I worked to get here, so I'm very thankful for it.
Are there any mistakes that you may have made along the way working with Matchroom? Because obviously it's a completely sort of different setup that you think, oh, I had to reflect on that and go, I want to improve.
Every day. Okay. We'd be here all day if I was to list out those mistakes, and those mistakes will continue to happen, I think, but that's how you learn, and that's how I learn. It's I made that mistake, I know not to do that again, and I'll only know not to do that again if I know that I didn't do it right the first time. And that's certainly how I learn, and that's how I'll continue to learn. And so long may the mistakes, not too detrimental, continue, because it means I'm continually learning and growing, which is the ultimate goal. Yeah.
Is there any key moments or highlights that you've had working in Matchroom that you're like, oh, this is such a great moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is such a great business where you attend great events every week. I mean, we're here at Eubank Ben 2, which will be up there. Eubank Ben 1 was obviously a great fight. My first fight at Matchroom was AJ Usyk won at Spurs as well. What an event to start with. And then obviously the big fights in America, the Canelo fights that I've done have been great as well. So there's definitely not one or even 5 that I can pick out, but there's certainly a good few that have been up there.
What's the work-life balance like? Because in my head it sounds like you are constantly on the go. Yeah,
look, it doesn't exist, but you also accept that when you come into a job like this. You can't come into a job like this and then say there's no work-life balance, because you know what you're getting into. And the other thing that I say when my friends ask me this is, it's frustrating in businesses where the culture is not consistent across the business. It's not like Frank, Eddie, Sean, the guys at the top. It's not like they're at home with their families and they're telling you what to do. Those guys are on the road more than anyone. And so that level of expectation does filter down, and you have to accept that is the situation in working in an industry like this and in a company like this, and you have to decide whether that's for you or not. And if you're not, I'm not naive to the fact that there are 100 people who will queue up to do my job.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you get to a point. Everyone has different phases in life. If you get to a point where you think, I can't do this anymore, then you move on and somebody else will come in. But no, I accept the work life is what it is. I have an extremely, incredibly supportive wife who holds it down at home, is a working woman herself, and a fantastic mother. So makes my job a lot easier. That she is super supportive in the way that she is, and allows me to do what I'm doing. So Yeah, no, the work-life balance doesn't exist.
No, that's amazing. Talk to me about what a typical day in the life for you looks like then.
So my boss is based in America, so it tends to be quite circular. So I'll wake up in the morning, there'll be a bunch of stuff that's come in overnight that I'll tackle first. Then there'll be a period of time where America is still asleep and I'm able to get on top of the my stuff that it's been in my inbox. Then the US are awake again and things come piling back in, and then you spend the evening just getting through all of that, and then obviously it's quite circular. It's non-stop. It's non-stop, and of course it's not just the boxing that I work in. I'm across the business, so there's fun stuff going on in snooker, in pool, in darts as well. And we know darts is such a great business at the minute as well. So,
do you get to any of those shows as well, like the darts and stuff like that?
Not as much. I mean, obviously I'm at every UK event. I go to most of the US events in boxing, so that takes up most of the calendar. I do try and go to a few snooker events and darts and pool events. Those are usually sort of around when I have board meetings with snooker and multi-sport. I'm yet to experience darts. I've been, but to really experience darts, I've yet to do that. So I'm looking forward to ticking that off at some point.
Alexander Palace, hopefully.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that one day. We'll see. I'll get on Matt Porter.
Of course. And talk to me about, have you taken up, so obviously some of the fitness approaches come into Matchroom now. I was talking to Bella earlier, and that culture has definitely shifted a lot in terms of obviously Kai Peacock being on board and that health and well-being aspect as well.
Well, if you look at the picture of me when I started Matchroom to now, it'd answer your question, and that is absolutely not. I really want to. There's no excuse. I just haven't got into the routine of doing any exercise. There's people here that will push you to do that. Not that I'm making any excuses, but I'm also in Birmingham. I don't live in London, so I don't get to utilise Kai in the office as much as people who are in the office on a daily or weekly basis. That said, I also don't necessarily do the 5k runs or take advantage of working out with Kai when we're on events. Again, I'd put that down to work, but I can't really do that when people like Frank and Eddie, who are 10 times busier than me, can make the time to make those sessions. So yeah, one thing for me to work on for sure.
Definitely. And obviously you've got a very high pressurized job. Like, how do you find the ways to cope mentally as well with everything that you've got under stress that probably does come in with what you do?
Yeah, look, I think that's a really good question, and sometimes you have to allow yourself the time to cope with that. I think the nature of this job, and again, because I'm across the business, there isn't too much time to do that, so you kind of just have to get on with it. I think the stuff that you obviously do outside of work, I have a little baby girl. I love spending time with her, and she's a breath of fresh air. She can instantly take the stress away. So no, I love spending time with my family, and just taking the downtime when you can.
That is the best piece of advice. Like, family first is always my mantra as well. Do you have a long-term goal for yourself, like for the next 5 to 10 years, like what you envision doing, whether it's for Matchroom, whether it's personal, whatever we want to do in general?
Yeah, of course. Look, I think my personal view is you should always have a goal. It doesn't have to be specific. I just want to continually progress. I want to do the best for me. I want to make sure that the company feels like I'm doing the best for them. And as long as I keep doing that, that's great. I mean, there was a great Matthew McConaughey Oscar-winning speech. I don't know if you've listened to, but I really liked that, because he said you need 3 things. You need something to chase, something to look forward to, and something to believe in, I think it was. And his something to chase was him in 10 years, because you'll never attain that. Because you get to 10 years and it's you in another 10 years. And, that speech was really something that I was like, yeah, I like that, because I'm somebody who needs something to achieve, to something to chase. It was my training contract, then it was the job at Matchroom, then obviously I've progressed in Matchroom, which I'm really thankful for, and now it's just to continue to do that. So there's always something there, the carrot, so to speak, that gets you out of bed every morning. So,
And I think there's a testament to obviously the hard work that you do, but like you don't have a massive team of people that do what you do. We used to work off camera, there's only like 3 people across the whole business. And I think that's insane. Like, how do you ever look back and go, do you know, we've achieved great feats in what we do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've now got a team of 3. I don't know how Sean did it all when he was just the 1. Equally, I don't know how we did it as a 2 now that there's a 3. But that's the thing, you just get on with it, right? And you don't necessarily realise how slammed your plate is until you start to sort of divvy it up. So no doubt we are still super busy, but that's a good thing. And you know, we work really well together. Sean's obviously head of the legal team and has an oversight over everything, and splits out the work in a way that works for the team. So that's all good.
And without getting into the exact specifics of what you do, like what is it that across the board you cover in terms of the legal side of things, just anyone that won't know roughly what you do, without getting into too many details?
Yeah, sure. So in the boxing side, it will range from boxer contracts, whether that's bout agreements or provision of services agreements, venue agreements, sponsorship agreements. So you know, you'll see all the sponsors that are on the canvas. There's agreements behind all of those. So that's the sort of the broad sort of contracts that we cover. And then obviously you have more nuanced things. If there's any form of specialised matters that we're working on, we'd instruct outside counsel for those, like litigation matters or specific corporate matters. We would seek we'd enlist outside counsel to help with those.
Do you find yourself still learning doing what you're doing? Because some people are like, oh no, I feel like I've mastered it all. Do you still find yourself learning? Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't think that will ever stop. I think that's the major difference between being a private practice lawyer, which is a lawyer in a law firm, versus an in-house lawyer. Private practice lawyer, you'll specialise in a particular area. I was a banking and finance lawyer before I joined Matchroom, so I would only do stuff that was in that area. An in-house lawyer, you tend to cover a broad range of different legal issues. Obviously, as I say, when there's a specifically complex legal issue, you instruct outside counsel, which is a law firm, and specialists in those areas. So, you know, taking banking and finance as an example, if we ever needed to do a banking transaction that involved Matchroom, we would instruct a law firm, and their banking department would run with that. So the positive of being an in-house lawyer is that you do cover a wide range of topics. Somebody once said that being an in-house lawyer is like being a GP, because you kind of have to diagnose many different areas, and I think that hits the nail on the head.
Yeah. What has been some of your toughest challenges, obviously, working in Matchroom that you've faced?
Yeah, I think it was a major shock going from what I was doing to what I am doing. So that was shock number 1. And there's things that you do on a daily basis that you've never done before. So it's just getting your head around those kind of things. And you know, I'm a qualified lawyer, yes, but I think experience is so important. And you know, I'll give you an example of that. Frank Smith is actually a very good lawyer. Definitely better than me in boxing, even though he's not a lawyer. But what does that come down to? He's had 15 years of experience of reviewing boxing specific contracts that I haven't. And so even though I have got the tag of being the qualified lawyer, actually he knows what to look for more so than me. So there'll be stuff every day that I do that I haven't seen before, or that is, you know, something that challenges the brain. But as long as I'm challenged, I think that's where you will continue to grow. So
hit the nail on the head, and I think you've given some great advice and points. Is there, like, if, for example, let's say there's a younger you, what advice would you have given to that person?
So that's a great question. Look, you're shaped by your own experiences. I say that to everybody. My experience was that I really had to graft, and my experience was that I had to make the doors. I had to create the opportunities. So my advice is if you really want something, you have to make it happen. And it comes down to how bad do you want it. You know, I would take the train to London after work. I'd speak to people. I would make those applications. So that's the advice that I would give: is you no one cares about you. You have to be the one to steer your life. And, you know, we live in a world now where, you know, everything's about diversity, and I totally understand that. But you still have to do what you have to do. And if you can accept that it's easier for some people and it's harder for others, then you'll be fine. Change of location.
Change of location. It's all good. So yeah, you've given the advice to your younger self.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, for example, someone that wants to come in and work in Matchroom. Do you have any advice for anyone that wanted to come and work in Matchroom?
Yeah, I mean, you have to know why you want to work for Matchroom. And I think, look, we have a lot of, and when I say we, I can only speak for the interest that I get and the messages that I receive. And when I ask, okay, what is it about Matchroom you want to work for? And the answer's often quite generic. It's, just, you know, I love boxing. I love the business. And it's just like, okay, but what do you want to do? What can you bring to the business? And and that comes from all the training contract applications I made. I couldn't just say to a law firm, I want to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
It's, why do you want to be a lawyer at this firm? So you have to really tailor it. It's, okay, well, I want to be a lawyer, but I specifically want to work for this firm because I'm really interested in banking and finance, and you're tier 1 in banking and finance, and you recently acted on this transaction, and I read about it, and it was really interesting to see that you did this, and you did. That shows the level of interest that you've put into that specific law firm, and you tailor it, and that's how you become the 30 of the 3,000. And again, that's what. And I have to shout out Gemma Baker from Aspiring Solicitors. She really changed the way that I did my application form. But the point is, if you want something, you have to be able to articulate why you want it and not be generic about it. And I learned that the hard way. You know, it goes back to what I said about me saying I want this and I want that. And ultimately, I learned that no one cares. And that might not be the case for everyone. I'm just giving you my experience. And so for me, it was, right, okay, I have to change my approach here. And once I changed the approach, things really started to click into place.
Do you have any moment where you was like, all right, now I know this is a turning point where I've learned enough to be able to articulate myself a lot better now? Like, what was that moment where you was like, I've got a lot of confidence now? You kind of touched on it briefly before, but like when you thought, I really know what I'm doing and I really believe now I'm able to help others and also create change within myself.
I think it comes from having confidence in yourself. And I was very confident that, notwithstanding I didn't tick the boxes to be a lawyer at these big law firms, and notwithstanding X or Y or Z, I knew I was good enough. And I accepted that this process will take me longer than it might take somebody else, but I know I'm good enough. And with that belief, I was able to be very confident in the way that I would do things and the conversations that I would have. My biggest gripe is when people achieve something and they say, I never thought I could achieve that. And it's like, well, you have to believe it before anybody else can believe it. Otherwise, why should I believe it? You know, if you said, I never thought I could do it, then if you didn't think it, what should I think it about you? You know, you have to really have that belief in yourself first. And I was very, very confident in my ability. And some people would say it was delusional, but I didn't think like that.
To be honest, people always say something's crazy until it happens. And
Absolutely,
I'm a person that watches a lot of motivational videos as well, just to hear people's stories and inspirations. Is anyone else's story that's really set home for you and you thought, this is someone that I kind of, not idolize, but look up to and can take advice from?
Yeah, there's a few people whose stories are like that. Few like people that I know personally, and a few obviously stories that I've read about influential people. You know, from the nothing to something, the graph that they put in, the consistency across all those people is the effort that they put in and the confidence that they had in themselves. And that's why I can confidently say that I think the successful ingredients is to have the confidence in your ability, but also the desire to do what it takes and not necessarily expect something. And I think that's the world that we live in now. I think there's an expectation that, oh, you know, I'm an ethnic minority, therefore I deserve these opportunities. No, I don't think that is the case. I think You have to work for those opportunities. And if you have to work harder, that's just life. You know, somebody who gets something easier than somebody else may have to work harder to get something else than that person. So it swings and roundabouts. Life is never going to be fair, right? I don't personally think life is ever going to be fair. And you will never create a level playing field, which is why I think you have to focus and just do what you can do to get to where you want to be.
How proud of you are you? How proud of yourself are you about, like you said, the ethnic minority and what you've done to achieve to get to where you are?
Yeah, I am really proud of it. And, you know, I think my biggest disadvantage sometimes has been that when I speak about this, I come across like I don't think diversity is important. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I didn't let those factors even be a consideration, right? And I think the problem now is that people are relying on those factors to move ahead. And I don't, again, you're shaped by your own experiences. I never did that. I never said that I'm this, and therefore I need this. I actually accepted that it's going to be harder for me, but I know I'm good enough and I will do what it takes. And again, I can only give that advice because that's how I did it. I can't give advice in any other way. And again, to stress, I'm not saying that systems aren't broken. I'm saying you still have to do what you have to do to get to where you want to be.
And I hope one day you do sit down and either write a book or something, because I feel like it would inspire a lot of people, and I'm hoping that this is what this interview does for someone out there that's looking to sort of take a similar approach to what you've done. That just to sort of tie things up as well, because we do have the way in to get to, like, what are some of the things you're looking to do within the next 6 months that you think, all right, these are the milestones I've checked out? If you don't mind sharing obviously some of the personal goals you've set for yourself.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've been at Matchroom 4 years now. I've been very lucky that I've progressed. And again, I go back to saying, yes, I've been very lucky, but I've also worked very hard. That I've progressed quite substantially in such a short space of time. You know, I sit on the board of directors of World Snooker, of Matchroom Multisport, Matchroom Media, legal director across the group. My focus is to just make sure that I'm doing my duties across those businesses and helping the business continue to grow. And if I can play a small part in that, then I'll be happy. And so it's just making sure that I have the long-term goal in mind, but I'm ticking off the daily things that will help me achieve those long-term goals.
Honestly, I really do appreciate your time, man.
No, I appreciate it, mate.
Definitely.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. And yeah, this is beyond the title, episode 5 now. So these are coming thick and fast, but I really did appreciate this one. A lot of gems in there. So thank you again,
Great
man.
stuff. Thank you, mate. Ledge.